What should Europe do about the recession? And can Europe grow itself out of recession? These are two questions that need to be answered. Today, Britain posted its biggest economic increase in over 10 years, with 1% rise in the service industry and manufacturing, a 4% rise in construction, and a 0.6% rise in other areas. Also, Germany is posting a 3.4% increase in its economic output for this year, the biggest rise since unification. Overall, the European Union seems to be looking like it's much more of a real tiger than a paper tiger, a tiger economy on the move. Can it produce something out of nothing, in the sense that we're still in a recession? The critical point is about the money supply. Now, the crisis was caused by the Federal Reserve printing too much money. That is said and done. $14.4 trillion have now entered the system. There is nothing we can do about it. We've also had to pay off $500 billion to the banks, which they've stole, and now are charging us for the interest and debt on the loans that we gave them. Why is this? But today, Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy said that they were going to impose rules on the EU, as I said in my Financial Times video, that there would be fines and also fiscal adjustments made to anyone who broke the rules on how much debt, if they had over 60% debt of their GDP, then there would be a European Union fine. So what they're trying to do is, they can't do anything about the banks. They can't do anything about the Federal Reserve at the moment, because the Americans have got us by the short and curlies over the gold reserves, because 66% of the gold is still, of the Europe's gold, is in America. So, and the euro is a gold-backed currency, as well as having an index of goods which back it up, such as food, fuel, coal, energies either produced or imported, such as oil, petrol, electricity produced by nuclear reactors, which France of course has a big market in, which it exports to Britain, if you've ever heard of EDFL. Now, the problem is that Europe needs to grow, and yet we're having a cut. I don't agree with the Tory cuts. I believe that they are ideologically driven, and that the growth that we're experiencing now is due to the economic stimulus that the government put in place, the Labour government put in place, because there is a lag of 18 months for inflation to enter the economy, the real economy. But the problem for me is, what is the right level of economic stimulus or contraction of the money supply? Economic stimulus is normally developed by increasing the amount of inflation in the economy. But I've been very critical of that, because that's what caused the crisis in the first place. So what is the answer? Well, perhaps we should increase the amount of gold backing for the pound. Well, the problem, the Americans could seize it, or the Federal Reserve could seize the gold, and then we would be at their beck and whim. They would have an economic stick to hit us with any time they wanted to. And the problem with gold is that if you take away from central banks, which have some democratic oversight, yes, they are crooks, yes, they are gangsters, but the democratic forces, the university system, the army, the democratically elected government can shut them down. It's much more difficult for private gold speculators to be shut down, because they can move around and they can move from place to place and do things electronically without any necessarily anyone knowing from which country they came from. Now, America, South Africa, and Russia all have large gold markets, and so we would be handing over, if we had a completely gold-backed currency, our monetary affairs to them. This is the argument that Eurosceptics often put forward, that we should have return to a gold standard, but we would still be giving up our sovereignty, our monetary sovereignty, to someone else if we went to the gold standard. So unless Europe and Great Britain controls the gold supply, and you can't do that without wars and actually a territorial empire, then you can't control your own money supply. With a fiat system, you can control your own money supply, but it will inevitably lead to the collapse of your currency. So you have to somehow, with the Bank of England talking about a rise in interest rates, which would mean less money supply, or an increase in money supply. So we're getting two different versions from the Bank of England. Even the Bank of England is confused on this issue. But what is the right level? If we get it right, we can grow our way out of recession through exporting. But exporting alone can lead to a thing called mercantilism, where you only want to export and you don't want to import. This will lead down a path that will lead to tensions, international conflicts, because of a breakdown in trade. What we must have is a balance. We must have a balance between fiat money and gold, and we must have a balance between exports and imports. That's my view. I'm only an economics student. What I believe we must do is also get ourselves off of oil. As I've said many times before, we must have clean energy. We must have eventually fusion power. We must develop wind and wave and solar energy, which Europe has in abundance. Also hydroelectricity. Europe has many rivers, large rivers which will produce hydroelectricity for us. We must become self-sufficient as far as a large continent that is a trading power can be. But I believe that by developing high-speed rail projects like the Stuttgart 21 projects, and also high-speed rail in Great Britain, we will link Europe together. The railroads will be for Europe what the Roman roads were for the Roman Republic, not the Roman Empire. I don't like the Roman Empire, but the Roman Republic, and that must be our model. As a way to develop a new kind of state, which is a large state but a democratic state. Can empires and democracies be one thing? Can you have, in effect, a democratic empire? This is something that has always failed before. But in Europe, we may have a completely new, different kind of state that we've never seen before, and we can't actually conceive. This is what might be drawing together the social democratic and social markets, which produce to the point of maximum social benefit, and also the scale of the European Union, to create a new kind of economy, to lift the 84 million people within the European Union who are in poverty. Over 8% of the people who are working are in poverty. There is 1 million abandoned homes in Britain that needs to be sorted out. We need to deal with the problem of unattainable surplus, where the market has produced too much of a surplus, and where it has not produced the means for people to be able to attain that surplus. That's leading to waste. So Europe has a lot to do, but I'm sure it can grow its way out of recession. Thank you for listening.